Good morning, everybody. I want to thank you all for being here. As always, of course, keep enjoying your breakfast. We've got coffee and drinks here as you need to fuel up in the morning. Thank you all for being here for this latest in the Profiles Breakfast series. My name is Bill Ayers. For those of you who haven't met me, I'm the Dean, Chief Administrative Officer here at Kent State Ashtabula. Love being in this place, and I love the fact that the community loves to gather here, so it's a wonderful opportunity. We got a great conversation this morning surrounding public safety and law enforcement. So I know a few folks came in and said, why are there all these police officers here this morning? There's something going on. I will say down at the Trumbull campus, for us that's your average Tuesday, because down at the Trumbull campus of Kent State we run a police academy, and so we have lots of officers come in for training all the time. And so to help us kind of moderate and run the discussion today, we brought Jim Willick. Jim is the director of the Kent State Police Academy. Jim was police chief for 19 years, I believe, as a service chief, as an officer for a number of years before that. So outstanding experience, and I have tapped Jim to kind of help lead the conversation this morning. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jim.
Thank you. Thank you, Dean. Thank you for everybody for coming. I think it's an important discussion because law enforcement is kind of in a state of flux right now. I think we were having a lot of discussions this morning, and it kind of crosses every department, crosses county lines, crosses state lines, because every department is facing the same concerns and same issues. First of all, I want to go through the panel. I want to have them introduce themselves, tell you who they are, where they work, and then we'll get into some topics. We'll go through some topics, some questions, and then I'm trying to hold it right. So we'll do some questions, and then what we'll do is then we'll take some questions from the audience that you might have. Okay. So first, we're going to start right here.
Good morning. My name is Terry Moisio. I'm the Chief Deputy Sheriff with the Ashtabula County Sheriff's Office. Can you hear me? Can you hear? Mike helps? Try without. How's that? Did everybody hear me okay? Okay. Get the final drop.
Taylor Cleveland, I'm a detective with the City of Conneaut Police Department. Police officer for about 26 years, detective for about 23 of those. I've had the privilege to work for both of these guys at the Ashtabula County Sheriff's Office and at the Ashtabula City Police Department before he came to the City of Conneaut Police Department.
Can we have you use the mic for the recording, please? Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to start with some issues that are going on in our law enforcement jurisdictions and on our communities. So we're going to start with Taylor. We're going to work back this way. What are you seeing a lot of in the city of Conneaut, and what's going on there?
So we still encounter all of the normal problems you would think: overdoses, drug trafficking,
Mental health, those things have been pretty publicized in your environments. I'm sure you're all aware of the struggles that communities face with those. But I think that probably one thing that you're not aware of that our individual agencies are really struggling to try and get around and is sucking up a lot of our resources, which is kind of surprising, is the amount of child sexual abuse or child victimization cases that we have to handle. In our office, we have 2 detectives. We handle almost exclusively child-related cases, whether those are child sexual abuse cases, whether those are child abuse cases working with Ashtabula County Children's Services, or whether those are internet crimes against children cases where people are downloading child pornography. The good news is that the way that law enforcement handles those cases now, there's more collaboration and interagency cooperation to detect those cases, which means that we're doing a better job addressing them. That also means that we weren't for a long time doing that. But now that we're trying to more aggressively address that, more effectively address that, that is a strain on law enforcement. It's a strain on law enforcement for resources, and these are difficult cases for investigators to work over a long period of time. You need to have somebody that works them enough to be proficient, but you can't work child sex abuse cases forever, and you have to have a plan to rotate them out. So it's really something that in our county we're kind of coming to, you know, how are we going to address this? How are we going to do a better job of doing that? But that's a real problem.
To build on what Taylor just got done talking about, we're seeing something very similar. We've got one detective in our bureau that does nothing but child sex crimes. You know, we get together and we talk, and it's just amazing. I guess amazing isn't the right word. Shocking, the number of cases that come in on a weekly basis to each of the detective bureaus across the county. So we're dealing with that. As always, the drug problem. The drug problem here in this county is significant. We're seeing dope come into this county directly from the Sinaloa cartel in Mexico. The cartel's here, whether we want to admit it or not. Cartel's here in Ashtabula County. Violence, particularly gun violence. Back about 2015, I took a look at some statistics, uniform crime statistics put out by the FBI, and I looked at it for the state of Ohio. And what shocked me then was the city of Ashtabula town at the time, 20,000 across the board, not per capita violent crime, but just sheer number of incidents. We were ranked about 16 in the state for violent crime. You know, and I expected to see, you know, us behind Cleveland and Columbus and Cincinnati and those communities. But the communities that were close to us, as far as sheer volume and numbers, were 3 and 4 times our size population-wise. So that, you know, that was a bit of a shock. So we're constantly dealing with violent crime. Saturday, we had a shooting, or shots fired, at one of the bars here in town. We collected 40-plus shell casings. 40-plus shell casings. Fortunately, nobody was hit. We had a couple of cars hit, but that's something I don't think that, by and large, the citizenry is aware of. You seem to expect those things from Cleveland. You expect them in Youngstown. You expect them in the larger cities. But we're dealing with that stuff here in Ashtabula, here in Conneaut, Jefferson, Andover, you know, across the county. And it's challenging with the resources that we have available to us.
So can everybody hear me? So to reiterate what everyone has said, so we do have a serious drug problem here in Ashtabula County. Our overdose deaths have increased, and part of that may be from the pandemic. We don't know for sure. Our overdose incidents have increased. You must have heard here in the last several days we had 7 inmates overdose in the Ashtabula County Jail facility, which is true. The corrections staff did a great job. They were able to identify what was happening. We ended up Narcaning 7 inmates. We actually had them transported to the hospital as a precaution. As a result of all this, we had to have a body scanner installed at the county jail. Body scanner is a very intense type of x-ray. It takes you right down to your skeletal system. So the corrections staff had to be trained on that. Health department had to approve it. We actually wrote a grant and got a grant to purchase this body scanner at just under $200,000. That was a result of an inmate death that we had for a drug overdose that happened in the jail facility, and that's still ongoing at this point. So it's gotten that serious. It's gotten to where they're smuggling drugs into the jail. It's not staff. It's not by mail anymore. We do everything electronically with mail, with commissary, with everything they're able to purchase. It's just something now, it's a new reality. An example, so the one individual that we know had actually brought the drugs into the jail facility was arrested for a drug offense, had multiple drugs on him the night before by sheriff's deputies, and he was able to conceal some of those on his body. The body scanner actually found a void in the chest area, which the corrections staff didn't think was kind of an issue at that point, and nor was it when we found out later. Bottom line was, when we took the individual to the hospital to get x-rayed by hospital staff, it was clear. When we bring him back to the jail facility, we had him change body position in our body scanner, and we found drugs concealed on his person that way. So there's legalities, there's things we have to look at, but drugs are everywhere. This is the most I've ever seen him get into a correctional facility. At the prison in Conneaut, there was several different ways they were getting drugs into the facility. Throwing tennis balls over the fence and all sorts of things. So, I mean, these are common problems that we're dealing with all the time. Public doesn't hear about it, sometimes doesn't see it. Just like Detective Cleveland talked about sex abuse cases. There was a story done by the Star Beacon maybe about a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago now, about the amount of sexual abuse occurring in Ashtabula County and why. And we've even had Cleveland News Station, Channel 5 News, actually come in and did an investigation. Why do we have all this? We don't have an explanation. We don't know why. It's just that we have sexual abuse in the county. That has not subsided. We have a detective who is strictly assigned to those type of cases, and he is so overwhelmed it's not even funny. So now we have to take those cases and move them to other detectives, which affects other investigations that are occurring because we have to move over to these cases. So then you'll have detectives investigating multiple cases, some sexual abuse, you know, some maybe robberies, assaults, that sort of thing. So, and as a result of all this, not so much on the sexual abuse end, but on the drug use end, just like Lieutenant Parker Mackey said, the cartel is here. There's no doubt about that. Our violence is increasing. Our gun violence is climbing. In Ashtabula Township, the night before the shooting in the city of Ashtabula, we had an individual high on heroin decide to go around the east side and shoot into houses, didn't hit anybody, and actually hold a couple at gunpoint. Luckily, they weren't harmed in that. The deputies were able to take him into custody, and he's now currently incarcerated. And that was Friday night. Then the following night, Saturday, we have the incident that occurred at a bar in the city of Ashtabula. So sometimes that's a typical weekend for us anymore in the northern part of the county. So these are all things we're dealing with, working together on, trying to do the best we can to address these issues. So it's just things are changing, and we got to change with it. So.
Thank you. And we are going to do some questions afterwards, so if you have any questions about things. I know sometimes because of ongoing investigations, I'm just going to kind of give these guys a little bit of cover. They can't talk about specifics of those, but we'll go ahead around and give you some chances to ask some questions. The next, I'm going to kind of combine two questions here about social media. So there's a lot of issues involving social media, you know, fact versus fiction, and how these departments handle posts. And then how do they use social media to combat some of the issues that we see? One of the things, if you get a chance, there was a officer-involved shooting a couple days ago in Virginia Beach, Virginia. I don't know if you guys saw that. But they brought out the body cams and everything and showed it to the media to really quickly to dispel some of that media stuff that was out there that was incorrect. So I'll let these guys address social media now, so we'll go back with you.
So, excuse me, with social media, so let's go back to what I was talking about. We had the incident in the jail with the 7 inmates overdosing. Once the ambulances started arriving at the county jail facility, social media exploded. We do have a public information officer now that we give information to and say, okay, we need you to address this, get on our Facebook page, do this, so on and so forth. So basically when we start seeing those posts, our public information officer is looking at that, and then we address it. We're very transparent. This is what is happening. Here are the facts. Because what happens is, and we all know this, with social media, when they start posting, it's not accurate. Rarely is it accurate. So we want to get the accurate information out there. And that's kind of why we created that position through grant funding. And we're able to address these things and most of all be transparent. We have nothing to hide. This is what's happening. This is what we're doing. And that's how we kind of address those things and try to quell any misinformation. Body camera coverage or footage, we do get a lot of media requests for that, or even citizens' requests for that. That is a releasable public record. There are certain things we cannot release based on that, but we're more than happy to release that. We're more than happy to release anything anybody requests within reason, and if it's not an ongoing investigation and there's some criteria we have to meet in order to release things. Some things we can't release. But it's just transparency, getting the facts out there, and telling the public what's actually happening and not hiding anything or have it perceived that you're hiding something, because then that affects trust. And that's what we've been battling here for the last several years. It's just an ongoing, again, something we had to adapt to, you know. Several years ago, we never thought about a Facebook page. Well, now we have one. We never thought about a public information office. Someone specifically doing that job, getting the information out there. Now we have one.
We've also got a Facebook page. I'll be completely honest with you. I don't have anything to do with it. I don't have a personal Facebook page. I'm pretty obtuse when it comes to social media. What I can tell you is that we do utilize it, and it's not an everyday type of thing. The two big events that come to my mind where we've utilized it is, if you remember back in June of 2020, they had the candlelight vigil protest in Cornelius Park for George Floyd. We were monitoring social media during that event. The weeks leading up to that, we actually had an analyst from the FBI assigned to us, and they were scrubbing social media, looking for things. Unfortunately, when people go to social media and go to Facebook, a lot of times they're looking for validation, and also to go hand in hand with that, people want to be helpful. They want to assist. They want to provide information. And we're getting inundated with tips. And I say tips. The one that comes to mind is there were 3, if you're familiar with the Axe buses here in town, 3 or 4 buses very similar in size to that were seen on Interstate 90 in front of one of the signs that says Ashtabula exit. And the social media post was, here's 4 bus loads of protesters coming in to disrupt, and create problems in the city. Well, when we ran that back through metadata, we're able to determine that that picture was taken 4 or 5 days prior to its posting, and the vans in question or the bus in question, the first thing that caught my eye was there wasn't any PUCO numbers, no fuel tax, no company name. They, in fact, were vans that were going from the manufacturer to the end, the folks that purchased them from the manufacturer, from the dealership. So it's helpful, but it also, these false leads they have to be looked into just like a credible lead, and it takes time and resources away from the actual incident. I hope that's helpful. Body camera footage. People seem to think that body camera is the end-all, be-all, and it is very helpful. I do the complaints against officers investigations, and when we first went to the body cameras, I'll be honest with you, a lot of our guys were resistant. It's Big Brother, it's administration wanting to catch me screwing up, doing something I shouldn't be doing, so on and so forth. And what I've found over the course since we've had body cameras is these body cameras are actually exonerating officers from complaints, frivolous complaints, or improper complaints filed against them about officer misconduct. The other thing that I think that the general public doesn't realize or know about body cameras is, as we sit here today, what's our field of view? Good peripheral vision, 180 degrees, maybe a little bit more than 180 degrees. Those body cameras have a narrow focus, comparatively speaking. maybe 23 degrees, maybe 30 degrees of a focus. Also the positioning. You know, I'm here. Our officers are wearing them on the center line. They're wearing them over here, or maybe on a lapel, and it gives a little bit of a different perspective. And as you look at the body camera, not only is it got a narrow field of view, it also, you're looking at it on a screen. So the gentleman back there in the red, in the center, as I sit here, I can see he's got on a red shirt, he's got on a tie that's red and black scheme, he's got a ring on his ring finger of his right hand. A body camera may not be picking up all of that detail, but with my eye, I am able to pick up that detail, and something that an officer observes very quickly isn't necessary. It's captured on a body camera, but viewing that body camera footage isn't necessarily, I don't want to say as detailed, but is capturing, you're not able to see the detail in it. And we're all accustomed to watching a football game or a baseball game where there's instant replay and 7 different camera angles to capture, you know, whether this was a first down or a touchdown. And we're not blessed with that, with the different angles and the different perspectives. And then the other thing that gets thrown into the mix is perspective, experience, training, knowledge that isn't readily available to the general public. Taylor and I, Terry and I, we all may go into the same situation and perceive it just a little bit differently because Taylor has a view from here, Terry has a view from there, and we all have different life experiences. We all have different law enforcement experiences. And that all comes into play. What somebody, Terry might perceive or Taylor might perceive is an innocuous gesture by someone. I may interpret that as a hostile movement and gesture and respond completely different simply because I may have an experience that's different than theirs. So.
Not to go over again what they said about social media, but I think it's important to realize that when we talk about how is law enforcement using social media, our 2 responses were, we have a Facebook page and we have a Facebook page. Our combined age up here is like 200 years old, right? So what we're not doing is we don't have a Twitter account, we don't have Instagram, we don't have TikTok. And what law enforcement does as a whole is when we bring these younger officers in that live in that digital environment or that social media environment, we end up locking them down. Hey, we don't want to see any pictures of you in your uniform on TikTok. We don't want you to take videos of what you're doing and posting them on Instagram. We don't want you to have any social media presence that's associated with you as a police officer, right? We lock that down. Instead of guiding that and saying, hey, here's the guidelines in which we want you to operate. As a matter of fact, we want to have images of you on your personal sites in law enforcement uniforms, doing law enforcement things that are of a positive nature, because we want that positive image to be pushed forward to the public. We don't do that because we're old and we're behind the times and we're scared of stuff like that. So that's not just our departments, that's law enforcement in general, so I'm not picking on ours. I think of the county departments that utilize social media the best for good information to go before bad information. The sheriff's office is doing it with their PIO. I think that's very forward thinking, so that's pretty much what I have to say on social media.
Okay, so this next topic is a topic that I'm actually involved with, and that's the the shortage of new people entering the field of law enforcement. I think every industry is having issues with recruiting. You go to the restaurant that used to be open till 10 o'clock at night, and they're closing at 7 o'clock at night, right? So we're all seeing those issues, and we're all seeing that. Probably one of the biggest things in law enforcement, and we were talking about that this morning because I think that's really something that we're facing, is the current replacement rate, which is how many people are leaving the field versus how many people are coming in the field. In law enforcement is currently 1 to 9. So there's one person coming in to replace the 9 people that are leaving, and that's just not sustainable. And one of the issues that I see at our police academy is we used to fill classes. We used to have all kinds of cadets. We used to have a waiting list for people to come in. Now we're barely getting enough people to run classes with all kinds of media campaigns, things like that. Now I will tell you one positive thing that we were talking about earlier is even though we have a lack of candidates, the candidates we're seeing are much more committed. They really, really have a passion and a desire to serve their communities and to be the kind of police officers that we really want. So that's positive that we're seeing. But the problem is that we're all seeing a major shortage coming in. So I want these guys to address that. Well, we haven't started with you yet, so I'm going to start with you this time.
We were talking among ourselves about this earlier, and he's right. We're not seeing the candidates coming in, and I think we're in a very unfortunate position here in Ashtabula County. There's the police academy down at Kent State Trumbull. There's a police academy out at Lakeland Community College, and the kids that are coming into these academy classes, they're running a job fair down there, and they're getting departments coming in seeking these kids. We haven't. Trying to think the last time we hired a kid, and I'm sorry, I'm using the word kid, a 24-year-old young man or young lady straight out of the academy. I can't remember the last time we hired somebody straight out of the academy. What we're seeing is kind of free agency among police officers or deputies going, I don't like what I'm getting paid here at this agency, I'm going to go for a little bit more money. And I think one of the challenges that we're facing locally within the county is the academies in Trumbull and in Lake County, we're competing against Menor. We're competing against the agencies down in Mahoney County that are, number one, paying a lot more money on an hourly scale. Two, specifically speaking from the perspective of the Ashtabula Police Department, that have a significantly lower call volume. We had an officer leave, I want to say it was 6 years ago. He left and he went to Geauga County Sheriff's Office, and talked to him every once in a while. Jim, how's it going? Man, it's great down here. He says, I'm making a truckload of money. He says, I'm making during a 40-hour week the same amount of money that I was making at the city, working a boatload of overtime and going to court 5 times a week. He says, so my wages increased for the amount of time I spend in the office. He says, and man, the calls that I'm handling down here, I may have 2, maybe 3 calls in a 12-hour shift. And he says, it's great. He says, so that's one of the things that we're facing. Did a job fair down at the main campus of Kent a few years ago, and we're offering a civil service test and talking to the cadets about the civil service test. And I knew a couple of them, and ended up talking to them later on, and they're like, yeah, a lot of the folks down here liked what you had to say, liked some of the stuff you were doing. The problem is I forget the agency, maybe Stowe, is offering a civil service test that same day. They make significantly more. I said, well, how many officers are they looking to hire? And they said, well, they're talking about hiring 1 officer. They said, okay, we're looking at hiring a minimum of 5 off of this list. We're at a period where our staffing was very low, and I said, because I explained that we're looking at hiring a minimum of 5 off the list. I said, do they understand that? Do you guys understand that? And they're like, yeah, we get it, but we're willing to take our chances to make more money. So it is a challenge. It's a challenge that we're all facing. And when I say free agency, it's no secret. I mean, Taylor said it. He used to work for us. He used to work for the sheriff's office. Chief Mackinson used to work for Conneaut. There's kind of I don't want to say a revolving door, but officers leave one agency to go to another agency frequently within the county because they perceive to be better pay, better benefits, less work, better environment, for a multitude of reasons. And that's honestly just kind of where I see us in the scheme of things here in the county. And I don't think it's significantly different with any of the other agencies, but I'll let Terry and Taylor speak to that, what they're seeing in their agencies.
I agree wholeheartedly. The number of applicants that we're getting for positions is not anywhere like it was 2 or 3 years ago. The quality of applicants we're getting is not at all where it needs to be, quite frankly. Anybody who's a qualified applicant is going to a higher paid department. And when I say higher paid departments, money is not necessarily the bottom line issue. I'm going to focus on a couple things that Will didn't say here. There's kind of this problem of not having enough police officers coming in has been a couple years making, but what we have is a kind of a compounded problem here now. So I left the Asheville County Sheriff's Office to go to the city of Conneaut, and I actually made a little bit less money going to the city of Conneaut. But what the city of Conneaut was doing at the time is they couldn't pay as much as other police departments. So they were trying to have a working environment that was a lot more work-life balanced. We're going to give me as a detective some more flexibility to come in maybe a little bit earlier on a day when I have something that's going on at night. Adjust my schedule so I can coach high school sports, bring my dog to work, do things that make working at the Conneaut Police Department more attractive than some of the other more rigid or structured departments. That was great and that was wonderful 2 years ago, and I think that we really attracted some good quality people when we were doing that, and we're still doing that. But now when you have inflation at 10%, it is a bottom line figure. When we were getting paid $7 or $8 less than a starting highway patrolman was, you could compensate with that with some work-life balance, working for good bosses, working with good people, working in a good environment. But when you can't afford to buy groceries at some point in time, when somebody is offering our very qualified people a lot more money, not $1 an hour, but $10 or $12 or $14 more an hour to go down the road and do the same job for a department that has already caught on that they want to have a department that has good work-life balance, and they want to have all these intangibles to make their place better. That's incredibly difficult. If you're not an administration that's trying to have the best department with training, promotional opportunities, intangible benefits for work-life balance, and then also paying people what they're worth, eventually you're going to be extinct as a police department, or at least an effective one. The other problem that this has, hiring people and people leaving, we constantly are training people. We take people off of, we will train a person, and if we hire a applicant that we really didn't want to hire, but that's the only one that we had, they will not make the probation period. They might not make training. So we have to hire again. If we hire somebody who is super qualified but don't compensate them, once they're done with training, they go someplace else and we have to start the process over again. So if we're slotted for, say, 20 police officers, and that's what it takes to run your department, but we constantly have 2 in training, we're really only running with 18 police officers. That spreads out your police officers that you have working, that they have to go and pick up the slack, and those guys are going to eventually say, you know what, I came here for a good work-life balance, but we can't get the officers to come here. I'm working twice as much. I'm going over here. It's a huge problem that I don't think, at least in Ashtabula County, governments, commissioners, city managers, mayors are really looking at solving, my opinion.
Well, as Taylor said earlier, I am old. I started in 1984. So as an example, when I started in 1984, I was making $6.32 an hour. And that was just above, well, it was several dollars above minimum wage at that time. So what we've experienced as far as staffing issues, we kind of got through that okay. We lost deputies to other agencies, vice versa. A lot of agencies did. So as an example, Lake County lost a lot of deputies to Geauga County. Geauga lost a lot of deputies to Portage County. We were able to recruit from the Cleveland Police Department, Warrensville Heights Police Department. So we're pulling from local Cuyahoga County agencies. So there was a time there everybody's pulling from everywhere else, and then it kind of settled down. The sheriff realized that in order to attract people and keep people, we need to up the wages and also offer bonuses for new employees coming in. And like Taylor said, work-life balance, that sort of thing. Try to be more mindful of that as best we can. So other things, looking at the labor agreements. What do you want? What do you need? We don't go in fighting them so much. I mean, we have to be responsible with the taxpayer dollars and be transparent with those dollars, but what are we able to do to attract and keep people? So we actually got the wages up, and the sheriff worked hard on that to a deputy's a little over $32 an hour right now. However, you could go to Geauga County, and Geauga's probably at 36 or 34, 35. Portage is at 36 to 38. You can go into Lake County, City of Willoughby. They're probably like $35 an hour. So there's all these different kind of the wage scales are kind of all over the place, but they're getting a little closer. Your smaller agencies aren't going to be able to compete with that because of the wages and the tax base and things like that. So staffing-wise, we're okay. However, we know if we lose somebody, just like everyone else is saying, it's going to be hard to replace that position. And with someone who is trained, has experience, because sheriff's offices, normally that's what we look for. We'll hire somebody from a local department who has training and experience. We still have to train them, but those days are kind of gone. You know, saying, okay, are you able to come, so on and so forth. And it's difficult, and it's concerning, but it's all about wages anymore. And the employees more so dictating to the employer in a certain to a certain extent. And when we go through our labor negotiations, you know, we kind of see that. And even after, we kind of see that now, as far as scheduling and things like that. So, you know, we may have employees question something if we want to change something. Because, again, it's work-life balance. So they're going to challenge that a little bit more. So these are all things that we're experiencing, but we're working through. It's just the times right now that we're in, and we're trying to get through it as best we can. But I think recruiting, retention is going to be an issue moving forward. I hold my breath every day because you don't know when you walk in if so-and-so is leaving or going somewhere else, or, you know, we just don't know anymore. It's just one of those things that we're going to work through, but we are fully staffed, and a lot of that has to do with how we managed with these new contracts and trying to attract people and keep people. I firmly believe that was a lot of it. So we've had very little attrition since then. We're still going to have people move here and there. That's common. But attracting people to this line of work, everything that's involved, the times involved, is going to. There's a new generation of people. It's not the same like when I started. I never got paid overtime in the first couple of years because the law didn't exist. We just worked. We worked a midnight shift all through a day shift. Just worked. Just did it. You know, nobody cared if we were swerving and missing houses and cars and stuff like that. You know, when we're driving down the street, you worked. That's all there was to it. So that has now changed. We have to be mindful of that as administrators. So.
Thank you. And I think I see it from a different perspective as an academy person, you know, trying to put people into the field. And I think I've used a couple different ways to describe this to folks that aren't in the field of law enforcement. One is we talked about police. How many of you have looked at buying a used car in the last couple of years, right? Used cars are worth far more than they ever were, and they're retaining their value. So police officers have become like used cars. There's no new cars coming into the market, so therefore the ones that are in the market currently are worth so much more. So they know that, and they take that wherever they can go. I think the second way I use is if you look at college football, right? You have people are making money, and they have the transfer portal, and they can just go wherever the heck they want to go if they're not happy where they're at. There's no loyalty anymore whatsoever. It's wherever I'm going to get the best deal, and I'm gone. And so that has changed things significantly. One of the things we want to discuss now is kind of the national media and what the media has done, and has the media played a role in our panel's opinion of the current crises in law enforcement. Taylor, you want to start?
I will tell you that I work in a municipality and in a county where I think the image of policing is very positive. The people that I deal with on a daily basis have a positive image of what we do. I think that the guys that I work with, both within our city and within our county, are doing the right things for the right reasons, are really doing the best that they can. I think that translates with the people within Ashtabula County. So to that end, that's really what I focus on. I try not to pay attention to national media or national politics and make that a comment on what I'm actually doing every day. But that's an individual thing that I do. I can tell you that a lot of people and a lot of police officers don't do that. And I can tell you that police officers are a lot less attuned to maybe a social media post or a national media post that's derogatory towards police officers than they are to some of the policy or the misguided policy that occurs from those knee-jerk reactions. Whether that is a no pursuit policy because some media outlet has said, holy cow, East Cleveland has had 27 car chases in the last year and 27 of them have ended in crashes and all of those people that crashed were injured, so maybe we should not chase cars anymore. And then there's a policy that is enacted upon about, as a knee-jerk reaction to a media story. That affects us. That affects what we do. That affects how we do it, and those have real consequences. So I don't really care much about that media story that is maybe making an allegation that police are chasing too many cars or tasing too many people or fighting with too many people. That's fine. But when administrations make bad policy that affects our job based on those, that has a real impact for us. So that's my biggest concern.
To build upon what Taylor just talked about, I think we've got a really good working relationship with our community. And I look at it from a little bit different perspective than Taylor does. From 2009 to 2017, I was with an organization called the National Tactical Officers Association. Basically what they are is like the AMA are to doctors, NTOA is to SWAT. With them, I traveled across the country, USA and Canada, teaching response to active shooter and patrol rifle tactics and courses. And I trained officers from 5-man departments, from local, state, federal agencies, military, Louisville PD, from small agencies to large agencies, state agencies and federal agencies, and well over 1,000 officers and agents. And during that time, I never had a single officer come through any of the courses that I was a part of in teaching. And now these are courses where we're using force. Officers are learning to use force. More times than not, lethal force. And I never had an officer come through one of my courses and say, you know what? We get done with this, I can't wait to go back to my agency and utilize the stuff that you just got done teaching me. And I think the media has kind of portrayed law enforcement to a certain extent, and to move it beyond just the media, Hollywood, whether it be TV or movies, is we're a bunch of guys carrying guns looking to go out scrapping for a fight. That couldn't be further from the truth. For every officer-involved shooting that I'm aware of in the county and in the city, I can give you 10 examples where an officer would have been justified using lethal force against a suspect, and they chose not to for whatever reason. And I think that that portrayal of law enforcement, where every time we're out, we're involved in some sort of a use of force altercation, has negatively impacted the agencies, not just in the county, but across the country. You take your pick of any of the things that have made national headlines here in the last 5 to 10 years. Would you want to be subjected to that? In a lot of those cases, officers at the end of the day were justified in doing what they did. But we're so quick, when I say we, the public, the media, are so quick to get on and to make a statement and to say something before the smoke is even cleared. A lot of times, just like Terry had said about social media and the Facebook posts, a lot of it's very inaccurate. So I do think it has impacted our ability to recruit new officers. I mean, good Lord, at the end of the day, do you want to be on the national news as that guy or that gal? You know, I don't know many people that do. You know, my son's 24, and he said, Dad, he said, I want to be a cop. I said, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard you say. Be a fireman. And that's the truth. And he says, no, he said, that's what I want to do. And, you know, fortunately, you know, he didn't listen to me, and he's over in Painesville now. But it's a difficult course to travel. And I don't think it's cut out for everybody. But I do think the negative light that has been shown upon us, and sometimes very justifiably so, is resulting in us having difficulty getting new candidates. I think to eliminate some of it, I shouldn't say a lot, but there have been a number of incidents where agencies have lowered standards to meet some arbitrary number, have resulted in bad hiring candidates and have brought problems to the agency that have made national headlines. So I think even though we are experiencing the used car scenario, I don't think we need to be lowering our standards, because once we start lowering our standards and lowering our expectations of our officers and our candidates, we're going to end up with problems. We're going to end up with those officers or people that are officers for the wrong reasons. We're going to end up with issues. And that's not good for any of us. It's not good for us in the profession, and it certainly isn't good for you as citizens and taxpayers.
So this is just my opinion, and strictly my opinion. Yeah, the news media, national news media and everything has definitely contributed 150% to the situation involving law enforcement agencies and recruiting and things like that. And it's the negative publicity. Here's the bottom line. People look at it as this. I can go into law enforcement. I'm going in for all the right reasons. I'm doing all the right things. I'm getting paid good money, so on and so forth. If I make one mistake, I can go to prison. One mistake, I can go to prison. Or it might not be a mistake. It might be how something's perceived. I could lose my career. I could lose my home. Because not only are you under criminal rules, laws, you also have civil. So we could have an officer involved in a shooting. He does everything correct. Obviously, who looks at it? Grand jury. Did you do something criminal? Did you not? Grand jury clears you. Now you have wrongful death lawsuits. You have all these things being filed, and those go on for years. So we currently have, one of our deputies was involved in a shooting in 2017. That's wrongful death lawsuit in federal court is still ongoing to this day. And we are doing something with that almost on a regular basis, defending that. We even got summary judgment on that, okay, which court did everything right. County did everything right. Nobody's responsible for this. Sorry, defendants or plaintiffs, you're done. Then they appeal. Then the appeals court, let's say, I think it was the 6th Circuit out of Cincinnati, says, let's look at this again. Now we go through it all over again. So with all these things, all the scrutiny, everything that's involved, people are going to go, this is not worth it. Why am I going to do this? So a lot of it has to be, or a lot of it has to do with the hype the media puts on, and a lot of it, let's face it, it's about ratings. And they hype a lot of things. And then they want to know everything. Like I watch some of these incidents that happen on national news. They're releasing body cam within an hour. Why are you doing that? This is not, the investigation hasn't even started. That's not fair to anybody, you know, but it's because of the media pressure. They're releasing all these things, or they feel there's pressure. No, not going to do it. So, I mean, these are all the things we look at, but it definitely has affected law enforcement. Let's face it. I mean, that's the reality of it. And I say, thank God we live in Ashtabula County, because we have 100% support here, and we love the support, and that means a lot. And you can tell there's a different attitude of policing because of the support. Again, like I said, I think it tells a tale. We recruited a police sergeant from the city of Cleveland that worked in the 4th District. He said, I had enough. We recruited him. He's now working as a deputy here, happier than happy can be. We recruited another officer from Warrensville Heights, high crime area. He's here. They love the support. That's why they came. They knew there would be support here from the community, where maybe there they weren't getting it, or the media was a little more, I don't know what a good word is to use with that, maybe a little more, actually that's a good word, antagonistic. So I don't want to say against, but maybe that is true too. I don't know, but we move forward, so. Thank you.
Okay, we know you guys all have busy days and important things to get to from here, so at this time, we don't want to stop and not give you a voice. So if any of you guys have questions, I'm going to come around the room with the microphone, ask your questions, and then I'm going to run right back up to them and have them answer it. So anybody have any questions? Right here.
First, I wanted to thank you for the job that you do and for coming here to be with us today. I have a son that's in federal law enforcement, and I used to worry about him when he was kicking in drug dealers' doors in Chicago. But in the last couple years, it seems like politics has entered into the situation, and now you have crazies that are attacking law enforcement people just because they are. And I know you have always faced that. The cop on the beat is the one that is so visible, and their life can be in danger at any time. I always thought, well, like with the FBI, they know who they're going after, and they don't, aren't stopping people for speeding and then getting shot. But do you think about those things, that this threat has become more prevalent for visible law enforcement, like you are?
So you're saying, Fred, about a threat, or?
Yeah, just that you are out in the public with a uniform on, and it's become a target. You're mad at the FBI, that's still an FBI agent. You're angry at the police.
So, and we have seen some of that. And real quick, not to belabor the point, but we had an individual, a deputy had arrested in the village of North Kingsville. I happened to be working that night. We had another incident we had in the southern part of the county. I think it was a Friday night. The deputy has trouble with the inmate in the car. He's slipping his cuffs. He's combative. He's all this. More than likely, he was high on methamphetamine. He ends up pulling over at a garage there at 20 and 11. Okay, we're all turning around. We're all heading to him to give him help. Next thing I know, he radios shots fired. So as he was in the parking lot there, they were shooting at him. We believed it was coming from Eureka Road. That's just happened the other night again when we were doing, I explained the incident on the east side there on Avondale and that, where we had the guy shooting in the houses and stuff. The deputies were taking on fire from somewhere there too. We don't know from where. Nobody was hit. So these things are happening more often in my 38 years than they ever have. Never heard of that. And I don't know, I think maybe Ashtabula has experienced some of that, where you'll be on a call and then you're hearing shots fired, or they're shooting in your area. Now, is that targeting? We don't know. But it's concerning. Like I say, we've never experienced that before. And it's happening more and more and more, and you're like, what? I mean, yeah. And just like Will was saying with his son being in Paynesville, my son worked for the city of Broadview Heights, went into the FBI, and I had a pit in my stomach. So, thinking, no. But, here we are.
I don't think, to address your question specifically, everything's cyclical, right? Fashion's cyclical, music's kind of cyclical, everything's cyclical. I don't think that we're seeing, in my opinion, I don't think we're seeing anything that we haven't seen before. Not to call you out, but you're a man of a certain age, and there's some other people in this room that are, I'm 52, okay? So there are people in this room that are older than I am. But if you think back to the 60s and early 70s, what did we have? We had the Weathermen Underground, we had the Symbionese Liberation Army, we had organizations like that that were targeting law enforcement. What's her name? Asada Shakur targeted New Jersey state troopers with a bomb and ended up in federal prison and broke out of federal prison. Now she's in exile in Cuba. But I guess where I'm going with this isn't something new. This is something we've experienced. And I think what we need to do is kind of folks that are in the twilight of our careers, is it's imperative that we pass on our knowledge to the younger cops that are coming up, because the cop that is 6 months out of the academy sitting in the parking lot might not have the same perspective that I do at 3 o'clock in the morning when somebody's walking up to my car from behind and I happen to catch him in my rearview mirror. His response is probably going to be significantly different than the way that I respond to that individual. Not saying that it's right, I'm not saying that it's wrong. It's just different. And unfortunately, experience is something that you get just after you needed it. So that goes back to passing along the lessons and the information that we've received and learned. A smart man learns from their mistakes, a wise man learns from the mistakes of the others, and pass along that knowledge to the younger generation so that we don't end up with more tragedies.
Hey, just real quick, because I think what he said was important. Just like we have seen this before in the 70s, the answers to these problems are the same as they were. In the 70s, we didn't require police officers to have a police academy. We would just hire them. We would pay them $6 an hour. There would be very little training. We weren't aggressively putting bad people in jail where they needed to be. And now we're at the same point. We're not paying police officers very well. Our training standards are terrible. We have an aversion to putting people in prison. We call it mass incarceration instead of keeping violent offenders in. All of those solutions that gave us low crime rates throughout the late 90s and 2000s, there were solutions in the 70s, and there are solutions again now. It's the same problem. We know how to fix this stuff. We just have to do these things.
Any other questions? Yes.
I picked up a little bit on the discussion that you guys had about different counties having different pay rates, having a little bit of a lesser of a load. And it just seems to me that the counties that you guys are referring to where we're losing people to are a little bit well off, a little bit lot more well off than we are as a county in the economy. So I start to wonder, to solve some of these problems, should we look at how to improve our economic status and therefore maybe be able to have the situation that we have in other counties? Is that something that you guys think is relevant?
Taylor doesn't want to answer that question.
That is what I hear from absolutely every politician or city administrator that says, hey, listen, police officers, you know the way that we're going to fix you? We're going to bring in more business and industry in here. That way we can have a higher tax base. That way at the end of the day, we can give you the resources that you need to do your job. It's a chicken and egg scenario, right? We can't, knowing that we have one of the highest violent drug cartels operating rampantly in the streets, and apparently now a massive child sexual abuse rate that's higher than anybody else. Who wants to move their family, if they know that, into this county? Who wants to bring their business in here, knowing that we have a huge overdose problem and that we're going to have to struggle with providing drug and alcohol treatment for our workers if we can even get them? If you think that you can't address quality of life issues and make people safe in a county as a core tenet for economic development, you're misguided. Absolutely misguided. That should be the number one thing that we do, because we have a great county. If we make it safe, we make it healthy, we take care of these problems, we will bring good people that want to bring good businesses into this county.
correct. We need to work on it. So we need to work on a lot of things. So it has to do with our rate of poverty. It has to do with everything as a whole. So yes, we want to build on that. But a lot of it has to do with, trying to solve some of these problems. Some of them aren't really that solvable. We need more treatment for drug addiction. What we're also seeing, we haven't really discussed much of it now, is mental health. Mental health is off the rails. Law enforcement response to mental health is, I've never ever seen it like this before. They wanted to criminalize mental health. No, we're not going to do that. So there's all these things. We have to try to get those under control, build our tax base. And I know every community in this county is trying to do that. We're trying to draw in business. We're trying to develop our tourism. We're trying to keep that going in our lakefronts and all the good things we have going on here. We're doing that. But there's also some other things we need to look at too, is our social services and providing things and trying to improve on the quality of life of the residents here, some residents here. Unfortunately, this started way back, late 60s, early 70s, and with a lot of public housing, just with my experience with the city of Ashtabula and the city of Conneaut, that sort of thing. And that affected things as we moved down the road. So there's a lot of things, but there's a lot of improvements, a lot of good that everybody's done. And again, are we going to reach a tax base of Geauga County or of Lake County? Probably not, no. But, it's something we can aspire to. We may at some point, but it's not always tax-based too. So, but I mean, we're aware of that. We're aware of when we're recruiting people and we're doing, a deputy will come to us and say, well, why am I not making $38 or $40 an hour? Well, there's a lot of factors there. So it's what the taxpayers can afford, those type of things. So.
Any other questions?
This is for the Kent State folks. You'd mentioned a little bit about some of the training that you do in Trumbull, and I know I've previously had a sidebar discussion with the dean about maybe moving some of those services here. Can you talk about what you're thinking about moving here, or possibly what's going to be offered here? Because I know it would be a big help to our officers.
Sorry. Okay, so we have tried. We have taken over. We're the regional training provider for Northeastern Ohio for law enforcement, advanced training. We've also looked at different academy opportunities and training opportunities here. One of the issues, and I was talking to the panel about it earlier, so law enforcement requires CPT, continued professional training. Pretty much every job, if you're an attorney, it's CLE, right? So everybody has different requirements for their jobs. The problem is the way it's offered. Agencies have to pay for it, the funding source from the state. We talked about, I don't know if you've ever applied for a grant, that the red tape was almost worse than trying to get the money. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to bring advanced training here also. I'm not sure about a basic academy because of the other ones that are locally, like relatively close. But we're trying to bring advanced training here. I was actually just talking to the gentleman about field training, officer training, and potentially a SORAT, which we might use well for if the state will let me. You know how that goes. So we are trying to do that. Any other questions?
First, I want to thank Jim, who I know is here not just because I'm his boss, but because he really does. He firmly believes in the importance of the work that we do and supporting the law enforcement community. I want to thank all the panelists for being here today, for sharing their insights. This is a part of the world that a lot of the rest of us don't get to see very often, and so I always walk away having learned things. So thank you, gentlemen, for being here and sharing. Thank you all for being here today.
For our next Profiles Breakfast series, we will see you guys next year. I don't know if you guys have heard that yet already, but we'll see you in 2023. We will be taking the month of January off, but we'll see you back here the first Wednesday in February, which will be February 1st. And thank you as well to our panelists. So thank you, and have a great holiday season, everyone.